Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Matt Townsend Show. I am your host, Dr. Matt Townsend. Yes! Your relationship coach, your guide on the side. We do what we can every day on this show to help you and your loved ones grow healthy, happy lives, healthy, happy relationships. Welcome to the program, everybody. We got a doozy for you. If you've ever been sitting there, if you remember the old days, you'd pull up your car into the gas station, bing, bing, you'd hear the bing, bing, and some really great person would run out as fast as they could and start washing your windows. Now, this actually happened to me where I went to small town Utah, pulled up, and it was the weirdest thing because, I grew up and that's what you do. The people would run to your car, they'd wash your windows, they'd check your oil. Those were the days, right? They'd fill your car up with gas. So I'm driving through old school Utah, pull up into some little gas station, not sure what I'm going to be charged here because I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I hear, right when I pull up, I just see these people opening the door and running out to my car. And I'm like, oh boy, what's going on? A robbery? Somebody robbing this store and trying to get away? Am I going to be carjacked? And they just look at me like, what can I get you? They said. What? I said, how can I help you? Well, I'm here to get some gas. Well, what kind of gas would you like? How much would you like? And I had to I could not believe it. They were actually serving me. It was the weirdest thing. I don't have to get out and go in and beg them to hit my pump and let's go. Come on, can you hit pump 4? We're not moving there. So it blew my mind all of the sudden out of nowhere. Someone's serving again. They're doing my windows. And they're doing it without even me running over a little thing that goes bing, bing. What is the deal? It threw me back. Now, it drives me crazy because should I be so weirded out by somebody just trying to offer really good customer service? Then I was sure when I see how much per gallon I'm going to pay, I knew I'd have to pay for it then, right? You got to pay for that service. Lo and behold, not too expensive, not more expensive than, the place on the corner. Middle of Booneyville, they just felt it was important to give a good experience. They want you coming back, and you know what? Customer service is not dead. Of course, it only exists in one place, apparently, because then, meanwhile, I've been on family trips recently, and on these other family trips, I need to take food back at a restaurant, and I'm like, hey, this isn't quite right. I think it needs to be cooked more, and they're like, oh, jeez. Okay. Sorry. We'll do it again. And I just felt like, well, I don't want to put you out. I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want to create problems for you. Customer service. Is it out there? Do you feel like customer service is dead? And not just customer service. Do you feel like as a culture, as a society, as a group of people, are we better at serving others or are we getting worse? Think about your own life. Think about your own kids. If you drop something in the middle of the floor, would all of your children dive to pick it up to help you out, to serve you? Or would it be like, oh, really? Who's going to get it this time? Service. That's what we're talking about on the show today. Does it exist? Customer service, not just customer service, community service. Are you out there serving your community? And we're going to bring it right back down into our relationships and right back to you. Are you a person who serves the other? Are you a person who gives and lifts the heart of another? According to dictionary.com, service is defined as an act of helpful activity to help or aid another. Would you consider yourself somebody who is service-oriented? That is the topic of the show. We're going to be bringing on an expert who wrote a book called Serves You Right. And her name is Susan Brooks, wonderful woman who really understands this inside and out. She's going to give us her take on every level of service, from community, world service, all the way down to you personally in your most intimate and loving relationships. Service 101. That's on the show today here with Matt Townsend. Now, we hear a lot of things, right, about are we better off or are we worse off than we used to be? Is that a true idea? I want you to figure that out. One of our producers, Ben Wagner, went out to investigate if we're actually more selfish or less willing to give service than we once were.
One love, we get to share it, leaves a There's a tendency in our culture to sometimes romanticize the past, and you hear this all the time. Things were just better back then. Politicians, pundits, religion, film critics, baseball fans, you see it everywhere. We want to believe that life was simpler, purer, and better in the past. The new Aaron Sorkin show, The Newsroom, is often guilty of this, arguing that America was better off when we had Murrow and Cronkite instead of Maddow and O'Reilly. But I'm always skeptical of this kind of nostalgia. Do we really want to return to the past, and were things actually any better? Sure, technology has its downsides, but do we really want to wait 2 weeks for a message to travel all the way across the country? And our political climate is admittedly frightening, but do we want to go back to a time where one man could take over one of the world's most powerful countries on the promise of exterminating an entire race? And trust me, I get that the Transformers movies were an abomination and a symptom of a larger problem with the American film industry, but okay, actually I don't have a counter to that. Transformers was just an abomination. But one thing I often hear is that we are, as a society, more selfish now than ever before. Greed rules the day. But again, I'm skeptical of this attitude. Greed has been around for forever. Faustus, Macbeth, Caesar all found their downfall through a selfish desire, and greed was discussed by Plato, Dante, and Socrates. You could even argue that the first sin came from Eve's greed, her desire to want more, a knowledge of good and evil. As long as mankind has been around, greed has existed. It didn't start with Michael Douglas's character in Wall Street. So are we actually more selfish now than we were before? I was curious to know, so I decided to find out, an exercise which mostly consisted of me Googling variations of "Are we more selfish than before?" But there were some surprising results. According to data collected by Global Humanitarian Assistance, humanitarian aid in 2008 and 2009, the height of the global recession, was significantly higher than in the preceding years. Now that's both in terms of actual dollars given and humanitarian aid donated as a percentage of developed countries' gross national income. Now in fact, the GHA estimates that private donations to charitable organizations increased by about 50% from 2006 to 2008. And in fact, although worldwide humanitarian aid has spiked at times when there's a major natural disaster, the overall trend since 1992, which was the earliest data point available for this study, the overall trend since 1992 has been steady increases in worldwide humanitarian aid. And on a national level, analysis done by Forbes magazine in 2008 showed that Americans give more to charity, both per capita and as a percentage of gross domestic product, than any other nation in the world. And most surprisingly, perhaps, while the top 10% of income earners do give the most to charity in the United States in terms of actual dollars, they account for over 25% of all charitable donations, it is actually the low-income Americans who give the highest percentage of their income to charity. Now, people can continue to complain that the Twitter generation is more selfish than any that has come before it, but Twitter was used to quickly generate millions of dollars in immediate aid to the tsunami relief efforts in Japan just last year. Are we, as a society, more selfish than before? Maybe. We also spend more time playing video games, watching YouTube, and eating fast food than ever before, but does that make us selfish, or are we just bored and hungry? While we may be watching a lot of TV or playing video games, around the world more time, effort, and money is being used for good than at any other point in human history. Pretty good for the most selfish society ever.
Ben Wagner reporting there. Excellent work, Ben. So true. It's interesting. When you think about giving and service, maybe it's the service that's the hard part. The giving of our money maybe is easier than the serving of the people. Maybe it's easier for us to write a check than it is to actually have to deal with the customer in front of us, or to actually connect, or to bend over right in the middle of the floor when somebody dropped their plate and help them pick it up. Service. Do you feel like you do a very good job of serving? We're bringing on expert Susan Brooks after the break. She's an author, a speaker, and has built a multi-million-dollar organization with the great spirit of service. We're going to be talking to her. We also want to be talking about how service is not just about something we do for our customers. It's also something we do for our families and the people we love the most. That's what we're going to be focusing on for the rest of the show. Stay with us. You be asking yourself, though, while you're at break here, how are you as a servant? Are you giving? Are you caring? Are you leaving some things out there to the world and helping to give and be more with others. You're listening to The Matt Townsend Show. We will be back after this break on Sirius XM 143 BYU Radio. Welcome back, everybody, to The Matt Townsend Show. Today we're talking about service. Are you serving those around you? Are you receiving good service, customer service, all types of service? But before we get into our wonderful guest, Susan Brooks, we are first going to basically tackle the idea of what to do when you haven't gotten the service you thought you needed. If your service wasn't good enough, did you complain about it? Here's a featurette from Corinne Collins about how she deals with bad food service.
I'm a pretty regular restaurant frequenter, and like any self-respecting Englishwoman, I like my service to be top-notch. Otherwise, guess what? I'm sending it back. My food, that is. If my food arrives to my table warm, or even worse, lukewarm, when it's supposed to be hot, I'm sending it back. If my steak isn't as rare as I want it to be, I'm sending it back. If my vegetables are overcooked, yes, that's right, I'm sending them back. So, as you can imagine, I pose a bit of a problem for servers and chefs, but only if they can't get it right. And I'm definitely not afraid to complain if things go wrong, and I have no problem asking for the manager. But it appears to be a pretty English thing. We don't like to pay for service and meals that are subpar unless we're expecting them to be, just as we don't like people who cut in line, or jump the queue as we say, or the French. Okay, the last one was a joke. But we truly are sticklers when it comes to service. In fact, most of our supermarkets have a money-back guarantee, where if the product isn't to your satisfaction, whether that's because of quality or simply because you don't like the taste of it, you can take it back for a refund. Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, I cannot recall a time when I've noticed such a guarantee here. And I also can't remember how many times I've witnessed my mother write emails and letters of complaint. And I'm not afraid to do the same thing either. If the food isn't right, I'll send it back. If the service is bad and the server doesn't care, I'll ask for the manager. And if all else fails, I'll write a scathing letter of complaint to someone who cares, because I want to get my money's worth. And sure, it might be embarrassing or annoying for the server to take the food back to the kitchen, and I might look like a Gordon Ramsay wannabe, but I don't think it's unfair to get what you asked and paid for.
Darn tootin'. Good work, Corinne Collins there. You need to get what you've paid for crying out loud. And we're now going to go to our expert on this, Susan Brooks. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Matt. Thank you.
Good to have you on. Now, I've spoken with Susan. We went to Aruba together and had a really great speech there, talked to a bunch of people, and she wows the audiences. You wouldn't believe it. She's got so much energy wrapped up in this cute little body, don't you, Susan?
Well, it matches yours, my dear. Make sure that it's clear that we were on the platform together, that you and I didn't go to Aruba.
We didn't just go hang out at Aruba. We did hang out at Aruba, but with about 20 other people.
20 other, at least.
But it was tons of fun. And, Susan, you have such an interesting background for service. So here you are, master's degree in education. You were a school teacher. And then you go create a multi-million-dollar cookie business, mail-order business that you sell off. Tell us how you got from there to service.
Well, service was at the very beginning of my journey, actually. You know, I grew up, Matt, with heroes like Martin Luther King, who said, our greatness is determined by service.
Oh, neat.
So when I was a teacher, and of course as a beginning teacher, I got the lowest level of students. In other words, the ones that needed the English credit in order to graduate. They had failed so many times before. Well, they weren't particularly interested in the curriculum that was designed in diagramming a sentence or Beowulf. So when I realized that those students were my very first customers, I created a curriculum for them that dealt with job interviews, running a household budget, being able to put a resume together. So my students were my very first customers.
And you met them where they were, right?
I'm sorry?
You met them where they were. They just needed some basic skills, so you start there.
Exactly, and that's where you have to start anywhere. And just relating to the commentary that you had early on about complaining, servers or partners are not mind readers. So unless you communicate, which she emphasized heavily in her piece, that you communicate, nope, this isn't how I wanted it, no, I'm sorry, this isn't quite right yet, then they have the opportunity to recover and show up as the heroes that they were meant to be in the beginning. So.
And improve. I mean, it seems like we're so afraid to say anything because we don't want to sound like we're complaining, and then we complain about the bad service.
Right. So you're doing a disservice not only to the experience and to the particular person that's trying to serve you, whether it's in a restaurant or a retail store, because they have no clue where they failed. You've never communicated that. So what good is that? And then you go around and tell all these people, but they didn't have a chance to show up. Now, when you go and talk to them and they still don't want to know, well, then...
That's a different game.
All guns blazing on that one.
Then you put that on the Internet.
Exactly. Well, you know what? That is true.
Yeah.
But when I first started my company, I noticed that as a customer, rude is in. And mediocrity was the norm. And apathy and that whatever attitude drove me crazy. So, yes, it was a cookie business. But one of our most important ingredients was what I call service enthusiasm. And that was as important as the chocolate chips, I'll tell you that right
So that
now.
was just you being excited to serve?
You know, when you think, Matt, about each one of us and what we do, it's all about service.
Absolutely.
Look at what you're doing with this radio show. Look at what you do when you help couples. Look at what it's all about service. And in business, I think what's really important as a core principle is that service is not a department. I had a customer once that told me, well, I have my 800 hotline and it's attached to a machine. That's where I offer customer service.
Oh,
no, that's not even close.
No, not even close.
So service is actually in the bloodstream of every relationship that flows through every communication, every transaction, every conversation and connection, and that is personally and professionally. So the question to ask and the motivation to remember is to ask constantly, how can I serve? How can I serve? And when you designed this radio show, I'm sure that's where you started
from. That's exactly. It's the spirit of it, isn't it? It's you say it's that lifeblood. It's the spirit of what is my goal? Is my goal to serve to get, or is my goal to serve to give?
Exactly.
And it's a completely different spirit, isn't it?
Exactly. And when you bring that question and that core principle and spirit to a relationship, again, that's whether it's with a partner, whether it's with your external customer, whether it's with your internal customer, your community, that's the question. How can I serve?
And it's such a powerful, and then in the end, the fruits will come from the spirit of it. If you have the right spirit, which is probably what happened in your business, if all of a sudden you actually care about what your customers are saying and you're trying to lift quality because they want higher quality and they want better pricing or even just reasonable pricing for higher quality, you met their need because you were giving them what they needed. And it had to have boosted your sales.
Absolutely. And you know, what customers want more than anything is to be seen and to be heard.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, if you're asking the right questions and you really want to know, your customers will tell you exactly how you're doing, and of course your staff will too. And one of the most important exercises or processes that I suggest is seeing your business through your customer's eyes. Again, that's both the internal customer and the external, because they have an agenda, and their agendas are what you need to know in order to serve them.
That's exactly right. They have the answer of what they need. You don't even need to give everything. Just get into them enough or try to understand what it is they want and work on that. Start there.
Exactly. So, for example, when someone is listening to your show, they have a need. They're interested in relationships. They're interested in perhaps making theirs better or understanding how they can serve better. So they have a need, and they tune in, and they become regular listeners. And then they have an expectation. Well, Matt has to deliver today.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping I'm going to get stimulated or inspired or some piece of information. So once you know what their need is, once you know what their expectation is, and how you can deliver it, then the next part of that conversation is, well, what's been their history? Well,
where have you been?
As customers, they've listened to a lot of radio shows, and you know what? They start out good, but then they peter off, or you know what? Yesterday wasn't as good as today, and it's inconsistent because as customers, we've learned to accept that excellence is a one-time thing. It doesn't always happen all the time.
We don't see it consistently, do we?
Exactly. So understanding the history, meaning all of those in your industry and how they have defined service, is where you get to really step it up.
Oh, that's
and then
great.
The last piece of that exercise is the emotion that they bring into it. So, for example, I was in the cookie business, so you can imagine cookies.
Yeah.
I can use it to brighten my day, or I can use it because I've had a lousy day
That's
and I need
right.
to pick it up. But the emotion that's involved in listening to your show and buying cookies and going out to a restaurant, whether it's what happens if it's a special occasion?
Yeah.
There's a lot of expectation and a lot of emotion wrapped in there.
No.
So the person that's providing the service has a real opportunity to show up, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. And notice what you're talking about in service is a lot of that's not really tangible. You're talking about understanding them. You're kind of talking about anticipating. You're talking about emotion and energy. It's kind of all of these intangibles.
Exactly. And that's why training is so important, because you can provide a format, a structure. Please don't, but some do provide scripts.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? Authenticity goes way down there, because you can tell right away that those are not their words. This is not a real human. Just having a human is a big deal now, because you press 1 and you go to this department, 6, you go, that drives me nuts. But at least when you have a human being with a heartbeat, you stand a chance.
Isn't that so
train
true?
them, inspire them, make sure that they understand their contribution to the bigger picture, the vision. And, of course, full-out self-expression. Let them bring their personalities and who they are to the table. So all of those are great opportunities in business, absolutely.
They really are. And I one thing I love about that is, I mean, if I'm being sent to some automated phone system, I have a sense of where you place me. I'm just kind of some cog that you want to move through your system as efficiently as possible.
Exactly.
And it impacts. And so when we come back from this break, Susan, I want to have you talk a lot more about kind of the relationship side of this and some of the self, because it seems like in our personal lives, we're some of us are just getting tired of it. We're getting tired of it, and maybe it's starting to impact how we serve others or what we expect from our service in our personal relationships. I'll have you talk about that. I also want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you. They can go to servesyouright.net, and that's where they'll find your website with your company. Your company's called Serves You Right.
Right. That's correct.
Which is
and it all depends on how you say it, Matt.
It does. Serves You Right or Serves You Right.
Exactly.
Good. See how good you are, Susan. Well, love having you on the show. We will be back after this break with more of Susan and more ideas on how to get service in your life, how to create a habit of serving others, and create a space that's more nurturing and caring. You're listening to The Matt Townsend Show right here on Sirius XM 143 BYU Radio. Welcome back, everybody, to the Matt Townsend Show. Today we're talking about service and instilling a character of service in your life. How do you take service back and get it in every part of your life? So if you're a business owner, how do you increase service? And service from the heart, I think, is really what we're talking about. How do you do it as a husband, as a friend, as a partner, as a child? How do you instill this ethic of service? And we're talking with Susan Brooks, the founder of Serves You Right, and an author, speaker, past educator, and just a good friend, good woman who knows the importance of service. Susan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Matt. I'm having a great time.
Good. I'm so glad you're with us. And what I wanted to have you kind of talk about. So a lot of our listeners out there, I just kind of imagine some of them are just, they're a truck driver, or they're, just a mom running carpools, or a dad doing something. What would you say is the best way to get service back just into the very personal lives of just an everyday person, not a business, not an organization, just your life?
Again, whatever it is we're doing, each and every one of us, whatever choices we've made on our careers, on our partners, on our parenting, all of it, again, has service as the foundation of how we want to be in this world.
Right.
I mean, when we come from that position, then it defines itself as we move forward. So the first step, and the first person that we need to serve, and this is the hardest for women, is to serve yourself, and that's with a capital S, first.
Right.
And women have a really hard time doing that.
But isn't that selfish, Susan? That sounds so selfish.
Well, it sounds selfish because that's a perspective.
That's the
but
history.
When you think about it, if you give and you take care of your partner and your children and your employees and your community and your church and you're giving all the time, then where are you getting that energy, that authenticity, that goodness restored if you're not taking care of yourself first? And literally, without getting too personal here, that is exactly what happened with me, and I created illness. I burned out because I didn't take a rest, or I didn't eat properly. I was so busy serving others that I forgot about myself and ended up really having to take a time out. And because I love to serve.
Sure.
I mean, my license plate says it. My life says it. I live
everything.
to serve, and I love to serve. But as my grandmother taught me early on, after me, Susan, you come first.
Oh,
and she was a businesswoman, the matriarch in our family, very successful businesswoman. And yet, if she didn't make sure that she ate right and that she had the exercise that she needed, even back in those days, and that she had the rest or the 2 weeks vacation or whatever it was that she needed.
Right.
For women especially, this is the hardest. And of course, I think about your wife, Matt, with 6 children.
6 kids. And me.
And you.
That's 7 kids.
Job right
Tell me
there.
about it. I hear about it every night.
Women have a hard time, especially men do too.
Yeah.
But making sure that, if it's a truck driver and he's already been or she has been driving for 14 hours on the road, and yet there's a deadline, you need to get there by a certain time. It's not going to do anybody any good if, heavens forbid, there's an accident or you fall asleep at the wheel. It's worth it to take some me time in there.
Right.
And absolutely, whether that's a cat nap or whether that's going for a woman many times for a mani-pedi,
right.
Or just going out into nature for 30 minutes and just taking a break and saying, you know what, kids, I'll be right back. Point someone to be in charge, but I need a break. And not wait till that point, but just say, every morning I meditate, every morning I pray, every morning Mommy is not here until this hour. You train people on how you want to be treated.
Well, that's Mother Teresa, right? Mother Teresa said, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was like, in order to keep the lamp burning, you have to put oil in it.
There it is.
So you have to renew, you have to recreate.
Absolutely.
And so that's all you're arguing is, hey, we have to take care. We have to serve ourselves, and it shouldn't even to put oil back in yourself or just to eat right and sleep right shouldn't be even seen as a service. But in our culture, it almost has to be, huh? It's like an indulgence.
Exactly, and that's where you have to take your control back and say, I deserve this. I'm worthy of this, and the more that I take care of me, the more I can give to others.
Love it.
So that's where it begins. Now, when you talk about service in relationships, specifically with partners, this goes back to what we talked about earlier. No one is a mind reader.
That's right.
So, for example, Barry and I, my husband and I, are married 45
wow.
years.
Congratulations, by the way.
I'm not even that old. I'm only 47.
That
I
is
have
weird.
No idea
he married
how
a 2-year-old, Susan. That is so
It was
strange.
an arranged marriage. I don't know.
Yeah, it had to have been.
When we first got married, in fact, for many years, maybe for the first 5, when we get a flu or a cold, I hate to be talking about illness, but it's a priority right now in my life. Well, my husband, when he is sick, which is, I think in our 45 years, maybe 3 days, that happened.
That's because you take such great care of him.
Well, you know what? He likes to be left alone. Don't bother me.
Yeah.
Don't ask me. Don't get for me. Don't do.
Just get out of my way.
Leave me alone.
Yep.
So guess what I'm like when I'm sick?
You want
time,
attention, help. Yeah.
I want you to bring home the magazines and the flowers. I want you to wipe my brow.
Do you really? Oh, look at you.
I want all the attention in the world.
Yeah.
So naturally, when we first got married, I treated him the way I wanted to be treated.
And you drove him crazy.
And when I got sick, he left me alone, which pissed me off.
That's so rude. That is so rude. Why doesn't he think of you? Isn't that funny? But that's true. That's how we all are.
It is, exactly. So now that we're married 45 years and we've obviously, had some incredible moments that challenge the continuity of our relationship. And it's easy to walk out the door. It's a lot harder to stay in and keep talking about it and work it through. Yep. But the point is that now we ask for what we need. And if this is what you need, so this is how I can serve you. This is, you know what? This is what I need you to do for me because I really appreciate that. And I acknowledge that, and he does the same for me. So with partners, the main thing is talking and communicating and listening to what that person is not only saying, but reading between the lines because it's hard to ask for what you need.
Well, yeah, you almost think if you love me, you would just know.
Well,
come on, Susan. I've been married to you for 45 years.
Exactly. And I'll give you another perfect example. He is a teaser. He loves to tease. I hate teasing. I find that annoying, really annoying. So the other day, we're getting ready to go see our grandchildren, and Barry comes over, and he does that thing, where you point to something, like something on your shirt, and I look down, and he hits my nose.
Uh-huh.
Matt.
Did he stir the hive?
It was not a pretty picture.
Hi-ya! Did you go off on him, Susan?
And he just couldn't. He said, "I can't believe you're reacting that way.
I'm being playful.
I can't believe let go of it already." Well, you know what?
Isn't that interesting?
It was a trust violation.
Yeah, he should have known.
He knew. I don't like that. So when you're talking about relationships of all sorts, of all levels, and you're talking about the service enthusiasm that we're talking about and right across the board.
Yeah.
Trust is a really important piece.
Yeah, it is. It also seems like, I think you're right on with the trust. It seems like people then say, well, you can't even accept me for how I am. It's almost like, to me, service is me loving you your way, even though it's not my way. I'll do it your way.
There it is, Matt.
Versus somebody thinking, well, you should just learn to let me poke you in the nose. Like, what's your problem?
Well,
I mean, he could have gone there, but service is, again, I guess, the spirit that exists in between us that says, I am here to serve you and make your life better.
Yeah.
Where do I begin?
What do we really want? We want to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you do something that doesn't serve?
Right.
Why would you want to do something that antagonizes or push back? The trust, which is obviously those, certainly it's faith, certainly it's those belief systems that support our higher goodness and self, integrity. What could be more important in any service relationship than knowing that truth is the most important aspect of who you are, and how you serve. So it's not a question about is anyone watching you to do the right thing. You're doing the right thing because you know it's the right thing.
Well, and then there's your trust. And then all of a sudden you've created this intangible economy between us where now I'm bought into you because I know you will honor me.
Right.
You will honor what you know about me, and I have a trust in that. And think of that as a competitive advantage in business, in marriage, in life, in relationships, is the mere fact that I know I can trust you to serve effectively. And it doesn't mean like that you're just going to kowtow and give me everything I want. You can still, I even think, because the best service ever sometimes is pushback.
Absolutely. That's information.
Yeah.
And really what we're talking about is an invisible contract.
I love it.
Something that has an agreement of commitment. And there's that word that I'm sure you hear.
It's back. It's so back. It's true.
Commitment, the C word.
Yeah.
But it's really doing what you say you will do, and doing it with the integrity of doing the best that you can in any and every situation.
Love it.
So the next level of service relationship that we wanted to talk about was serving community.
Yeah.
Well, that's about being a good neighbor. What does that look like for you when I say serving community? How does that show up?
I kind of see it as actually knowing your neighbors. And
now
isn't that weird? Because that seems like a big one today, that there's just not a lot of people that know even who they live by. There's not this sense of camaraderie, this sense of community. Like, we have a neighbor that if our garage door is up, they're calling us. Like, if it's up at midnight, they're going to be calling us. I have others that my father was being a good neighborly guy and trying to help the neighbor put a dog back. That the neighbor was out of town. He was sure the dog had jumped the fence, and so my dad chased this neighbor's dog down and grabbed it and was forcing this dog over a fence. And the postal worker pulls up and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm just putting this dog back." He goes, "That dog belongs 3 blocks over." And my dad was trying to put the wrong dog in the wrong backyard. Now, so
with
service
the
can
best
go
intentions,
totally best of intentions, but he could have killed a dog, for crying out loud, Susan.
Well, or just not done anything, which
That's
is,
right.
Of course, what most people.
But that's the community we're talking about, right? Have a neighbor that gives, that knows even your dog.
Absolutely, and recognizes what they do is important, whether they keep their lawn mowed, trash picked up. Safety is a really big issue, and obviously, that we volunteer when there are block parties or events. That how can I serve? That's like everywhere you go.
I love that.
That's the question. How can I serve? And then the ultimate is, of course, serving a cause, serving something that's bigger than you are, something that you're passionate about, or you feel that is such a social injustice that it moves your passion into action. So for me, for example, I have this very strong commitment to helping women find their voice and speak their truth. So I went all the way to China to serve young women because I had read that China has the highest suicide rate for women in the entire world. So it was at a university that I was able to connect with 87 young women and have them start thinking of themselves as global leaders. Very exciting. And then I come home and I'm active with the Girl Scouts. I mean, young women that's our future. That's how can I serve? So it's whatever. Sometimes it's animals. Sometimes it's nature, our environment. We have a lot of issues that we can need fixing.
Oh, absolutely. And more importantly, it's it's this spirit of you just simply saying, how can I serve? Where can I change the world? We can start with ourselves, we can start with our relationships, and we can eventually make a huge dent in a little part of the world.
Absolutely. And if we all did that, the world would be a better place.
Can you imagine?
Yes, it would be
I think you've motivated us to do it, Susan. Good. I appreciate so much you being on the call. Now, if they want to get more information about you, where do they go? ServesYouRight.net? Is that where it would be the best place to find you?
Yes. And what I'd like to mention is, of course, during this time when change is changing so fast, certainly recovering and still knee-deep in it, in this economic tsunami that we're going through.
Right.
We're looking for role models and pioneers who can obviously really step up in a very brave and courageous way so that they then can inspire others. And that's my second book, which is coming out in the fall.
Great.
Thought
What's
you'd
that?
Never asked me.
Yeah, what's that?
It's called Outrageous, Courageous, and Highly Contagious.
Oh, excellent.
And service enthusiasm, once again, is the foundation. But I have been blessed to attract about 25 people from around the world that are living large. And I tell their story and weave my own in between that and hopefully inspire others to step it up in their lives. So pretty exciting.
Excellent.
All good stuff.
Susan Brooks, you are the best, a light in the world. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. I'd love to do it again and again.
We will for sure. And
Okay.
Anybody that wants to get a hold of Susan can find her at servesyouright.net. Excellent human being and changing the world one person at a time. Go ask yourself, folks, how can I serve? You're listening to The Matt Townsend Show on Sirius XM 143 BYU Radio. Welcome back, everybody, to the Matt Townsend Show. We're wrapping up the show today with this final segment, talking about service and how you get service into your lives. I just think there's so many things that get in the way that make it hard, I guess, for us to be able to serve. Just a lot of ways we think, what we think we can do, what we think we can't do. Now, at some point, we need to learn that we are simply human, right? And we don't have the time to do everything that's asked of us. Here's Tom Brinton helping us learn to say no.
Do you ever have a hard time saying no to people?
No.
I know it can be a struggle for me. I couldn't even say no to doing this feature on how to say no. Guess there's a reason it was assigned to me. The desire to be agreeable is very natural. We want to be a good team player, we don't want to leave people in a lurch, or we're just worried we may damage a relationship by virtue of our refusal. A recent Jim Carrey movie called Yes Man highlighted the benefits of saying yes to life.
I'm a yes man. Wow.
Yes.
No.
You say no to life, and therefore you're not living.
But saying yes to some things is also saying no to others. A few examples. If you say yes to a relationship with someone you don't like, you're really saying no to a fulfilling one down the road. If you say yes to an activity you don't enjoy, you're saying no to hobbies that you love. And if you say yes to a job that isn't fulfilling, you're saying no to your career ambitions. However, life isn't always so ideal as these examples. Sometimes you do need to do the things that are hard instead of only doing what is most enjoyable. Sometimes you do need to work on failing relationships instead of just moving on. The real key to learning when to say no is self-respect. Do you respect yourself? Do you see your own time and energy as valuable? When you have this perspective, you're able to say no to things you realize are really of little worth to you and your loved ones. Dieter F. Uchtdorf, a member of the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, had this to say about prioritizing our opportunities.
My dear brothers and sisters, we would do well to slow down a little. Proceed at the optimum speed for our circumstances. Focus on the significant. Lift up our eyes and truly see the things that matter most. Let us be mindful of the foundational precepts our Heavenly Father has given to His children. They will teach us to do all these things in wisdom and order. For it is not requisite that we should run faster than we have strength.
Most difficult is saying no to good things to make room in life for the best things. But if you have a healthy self-respect and a solid idea of your personal and family goals, you can learn when to say yes and when it's best to just say no.
Tom Brinton bringing us the good word there. Appreciate that. It's so true. There's so many things that are good to say yes to, and then there are so many things that we may be overlooking that are maybe even more important to say yes to. It's interesting. When you say yes to somebody, you're inherently going to be saying no to someone else. And vice versa. When you're saying no to something, you're inherently saying yes to something else. I guess one of the keys then is to figure out what are the things we should be saying yes to. And one of the age-old pearls of wisdom, I guess I would call it, is the concept of service. There's probably not a concept more inherently good for you than just to learn the art of serving another person. That spirit of service that Susan Brooks kept bringing up, how can I serve you? There's power in that when all of a sudden you just realize that there's goodness that comes from serving. So on the show today, I want to challenge you. No matter where you are in life, if you're driving home from work, I challenge you to go home and start serving. Start helping with the housework, start cleaning up, start making that dinner. Think of the people that need to be served. Think of the people that you're being prompted to call, and get on the phone and call them. I remember after a long day at church, we took our kids. They were starving to death, and we had one more visit we wanted to run and do, just this visit of this really cute family that we visit, that an elderly couple that had been married 70-something years, and we went to visit them. We ended up spending an hour, which an hour in child time is like eternity. And I remember as they were tired, but my kids just kind of sat there. They loved these people. They served them as my kids do by just kind of quietly sitting there and loving them. They hugged them at the end. They gave them the cute old grandma, grandpa hug, even though they're not related. And, you know, they weren't grossed out, even though they may have felt that, just because that's how little kids are when they got to kiss old people sometimes. And then we got in the car, and I said, "You guys okay with that? How'd that go? How'd you feel about that?" And this is the basic point. My son said, "You know what, Dad? It sure feels good when we serve them that way." The benefit of service, my friends, is it makes us feel good. And the reason it makes us feel good, I believe, is because it's right. And when we do what's right, we feel good. So the challenge for you from the Matt Townsend Show is get out there and make yourself feel good. Serve somebody today. Try to find ways to even serve yourself so you can put some oil back in the lamps and even bring more light to more people out there. We love having you listening to the show. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to get a hold of us, give us show ideas, topics you want us to discuss, just email us at mattchat@byu.edu. That's mattchat@byu.edu. Thanks for listening, and go serve. It will make you feel good. I promise, everybody. Again, we're here every Monday through Friday, 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Replayed again at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. You're listening to The Matt Townsend Show. Hope to talk to you tomorrow right here on Sirius XM 143 BYU Radio.